viewers, it's great to have you back on the Urban Debate. Tonight, once again, we put the spotlight on India's premier investigative agency. Because once again, CBI's credibility hangs in a balance. I am talking about a case that we followed very, very closely a year and a half ago. And the fallout since then. The CBI versus CBI case, if you remember, viewers, it was a fight, a public spat that got really ugly between the then CBI chief and his second in command, the CBI special director. Subsequently, as the battle got really ugly, both of them were shunted out and cases filed, investigations ordered against both. Today, a day after the former number 2 man, Rakesh Asthana, was given a clean chit, today, a CBI special court pulled up the probe agency while hearing this case. And the court showed extreme displeasure. The court slammed the CBI and pulled them up for the investigation carried so far. The CBI special court asked, why is it that the weakest link, Manoj Prasad, has been arrested, but not Someshwar Prasad, against whom there seems to be sufficient evidence. The court then went on to say, why is it that you arrested Devinder Singh, accused him of falsification of records, when there was no concrete evidence against him? The court made a very scathing remark about ruining careers, and then went on to ask, why is the probe team shielding, and I quote, a certain accused who seem to have a bigger role in this case but are roaming free, while the CBI has arrested its own DSP. Now, these developments, like I told you, come a day after CBI gave a clean chit to former Special Director Rakesh Asthana in a bribery case. Asthana was accused by the then CBI chief Alok Verma of bribery in a case linked to, in an investigation linked to exporter Moin Qureshi. How did this entire case unfold? Before we really talk about the state of affairs, even now, 1.5 years later, we need to look at the sequence of events. And Tanima, in fact, is joining me to help us refresh our memories. Tanima.
This is, of course, at a time when they have given a clean chit to Rakesh Asthana, almost a year after this entire battle, which was played out in the public domain, as you mentioned. Let's just refresh our viewers' mind on what exactly had happened and how it all started. So it was back in October 2018 when CBI filed a bribery case against Rakesh Asthana. He was effectively the number 2 in CBI. After Alok Verma, the then CBI chief, Rakesh Asthana was the second most important person in the organization. So a case, a bribery case nonetheless, being filed against him was shocking. Not the least, it amounted to shocking, and the fact that he was also, this was an order which came from the CBI director himself. On October 16th, CBI in fact arrested the middleman Manoj Prasad, who was involved in this particular case. It was also mentioned in the court that he was the weakest link who had been arrested by CBI on this matter. October 19th, Rakesh Asthana alleged that Alok Verma, the then CBI chief, wanted to implicate him in a false case. So it was actually known in inner circles that there was a sort of silent Cold War brewing between these two, but it was only at that point in time that Rakesh Asthana made this entire matter public. And on 22nd of October, CBI arrested Devinder Kumar, one of the deputy SPs in this case, on falsification of records. We go into the following dates. We'll see that on 23rd of October, the CBI actually told court that an extortion racket was being run by the headquarters. This, of course, is taking off on the case which had been filed against Rakesh Asthana. And what we noticed after this point was, very interestingly, the government decided, because there was honestly a cat fight or dog fight, as we might call it, was being played out in the public domain. The government decided to remove both Alok Verma and Rakesh Asthana. They were asked to sidestep, and Nageswar Rao, remember, at that point in time was appointed as the interim CBI chief. After that, what of course we saw that the investigation continued, court matters continued, and if we go into the following points, we will see that it was later on that there was action also taken in terms of CVC actually starting a probe. You can see that in the following points, that the CVC started a probe against against on this entire matter, questioning both Alok Verma as well as Rakesh Asthana. But Alok Verma, of course, at that point in time had moved the top court against the government order.
Tanvi, thanks for really, taking us through the timeline as to what really happened, and the cases continue. But tonight, again, viewers, I want to ask this question. After all of that controversy, after all of those debates and that drama and people being shunted out, new people being brought in, the court making some very scathing comments even at that point of time, has nothing changed in CBI? Is it beyond redemption? How is it that this court is still sounding so frustrated and so fed up with the way this case is being investigated? And is there an attempt that is being made to shield the senior officers? Let's say good evening to ML Sharma, former CBI Special Director. Joining me this evening also Arima Sundaram, Senior Advocate with the Supreme Court, Bhaskar Ghosh of the BJP, and Mr. K. Ragotaman, also is a former CBI officer. If I can first up go across to Mr. ML Sharma. Now, Mr. Sharma, you've been on many of these conversations and these debates with us. And we've spoken about, a need for a clean-up so that these kind of instances don't happen. But if in a case that involves CBI officers that is being monitored by the court, there is a problem with the investigation, then how will CBI ever get the credibility back?
See, the background of the case has been given. I'll not repeat that. It is one of the most unusual steps taken by the former director Verma to have ordered registration of a criminal case against his number 2. I worked in the CBI for 20 years, and as far as I recall, it never happened before. I believe that by giving clean chit to Asthana and to DYSP Devinder Singh, justice has been done. Now, I come to the question of the observations of the court for not arresting certain people. Now, as you all know, and it's come in the papers, Manoj was arrested, Manoj Prasad, but his brother, Sumesh Prasad, who is also prima facie, who also appears to be prima facie involved in the case, was not arrested. And there's a third person who is, I know I'm not naming him, senior advocate and things like that. Investigation has been carried out against them, but the problem is arising that, this is my guess, that to firm up evidence, then the CBI needs to collect certain evidence from Dubai on the basis of letter rogatory. So that evidence has not come. So in these circumstances, one necessarily has to wait for that evidence. Now, therefore, one should understand that even though investigation is not a rocket science, yet in a certain sense, it is science. Evidence has to be collected, evidence has to be analyzed, best foot has to be put forward based on rigorous investigation and sufficiency of evidence. So therefore, I find it very difficult to blame the present setup in the CBI for dilly-dallying the matter. In such matters involving international dimensions, some delays do occur. And as far as the utterances of the court are concerned, well, it is a free-for-all. I think this could have been better avoided. And whatever the Honorable Court wanted to say, you should have placed it in a record.
All right, but he's also gone on to say that you've arrested officers against whom you don't have enough evidence. And Mr. Ragotaman, the court says that you've essentially taken steps that could destroy and ruin careers. And that's also a very significant comment to make for the court that's hearing the case. Does it look like a case where perhaps the entire investigation to begin with was either not, sincerely done, or that there was no case and this was simply done because there was politics going on within the CBI at that point of time.
I'm inclined to agree with the observation of the trial court that DYSP Devinder Singh was hurried in a huff and hurry. That was very destructive of his personal reputation and career. So this could have been avoided. But unfortunately, at that point of time, and again I'm not naming names, I know all these officers, the investigation was entrusted by the former director to an officer whose reputation is, unenviable. So it shouldn't have been done. I agree with that. But as far as non-arrest of others is concerned, one has to wait for the additional evidence. And if the Honorable Court feels so confident about the evidence on record, the Honorable Court has all the power to issue arrest warrant if he feels so strongly about it.
Let me also get Mr. Raghotaman in and ask him what he believes seems to be happening and if there should be a concern with the way this investigation is being done. And I raised this point again today, Mr. Raghotaman, because Mirror Now has been tracking this case very closely. We even raised this issue when the court asked about the transfers which are happening within the probe team. Even then, few months ago, there was a question about how officers were being, transferred out, and that could impact the investigation itself.
Yeah. See, the question now is, after 1.5 years, as you rightly told, it was registered in October 2018. After 1.5 years, they took the investigation. How long it will take? After all, he says it's a very ramification, worldwide ramification. What is the ramification involved in this case? It is only people who are sitting in Dubai. They are all Indian citizens. And could they not get out of those fellows and examine them and collect evidence? What evidence they are supposed to collect it? Only WhatsApp messages. And whether they had a talk with that complainant, and whether they had taken the name of the special director or Devendra Kumar or the DSP, investigating officers. So all these things are on an electronic media. And it is not in written document, and it is not in the other way of format. So to collect that, that too, the service providers are not based in Dubai. They will be in some other countries. So they could have easily written whether this conversation has taken place and WhatsApp messages have taken place or not. That is more important in this case, because everything is oral. Nothing is substantiated by any documentary evidence. If that is the case, then should it take 1.5 years? It is only because of Delhi High Court recently passed a stricture on CBI, and you drag on the investigation for years together, and you don't come to the final report. And with that pressure only, now I feel that CBI has filed a half-cooked charge sheet. And our special director, Mr. Sharmaji, was already telling, yeah, part of the case is proved and part of the case is not proved. Letter-rogatory replies have not come. And then how can you say that other accused are not involved in this case? This case is based mainly on the WhatsApp messages and the messages interception. These two are technical and it is all digital. Nobody could have destroyed it also. So if that is the case, and if you cannot collect it within 1.5 years and come to a final conclusion, then you say that the officers are not at all involved and we don't, there is no sufficient evidence. And straightforward, you could have come out openly before the CBI court. And instead of that, you say partly the case is proved.
Yes.
Partly the other accused, other than the public servants, the charge lies against them. How would the light in a Prevention of Corruption Act? Right. The main person, the main accused are the public servants. If the public servants are taken out, where is the question of involvement of the private accused persons come in? And where is the question of their being charged?
That is a very valid point.
Under the Prevention of Act.
Right.
No doubt. The private persons can take. Yeah, The private person can take bribe for the public servant. That is then only they can come under the Prevention of Corruption Act. Just if they cheat the SANA that I will do this, that, and that, it's a 420. You could have split up the cases straight away 420 about long time back and charge sheeted those private persons. Why do you drag on for 1.5 years and come with half-cooked charge sheet and say letter regulatory replies is pending? And this I have told you, and as I told you earlier, it's all in the documentary, electronic, digital form, and there is no necessity for any other evidence is required.
So let me take that point that you made and add to it also, Mr. Raghuttaman. And as I take this question across to Mr. Aduma Sundaram, Mr. Sundaram, fact of the matter is that the two CBI officials who were named in this case, Rakesh Asthana and Devinder Singh, have been given a clean chit. Their names have been dropped. CBI says we haven't found anything against them. The fact also remains that they took a long time to submit these reports. They sought three different extensions, between which the probe team, itself saw various changes. Why should I not then ask the question that it does look like somebody is trying to shield some of these big accused?
I think, Tanvi, the main point really lies in the way you framed your question itself. There is one which is the facts and the actuality of the matter. The other is the perception. However we look at it, there is a public perception that the CBI is not independent. There is a public perception that that Supreme Court comment of its being a caged parrot has not changed at all. There is a public perception that the CBI acts on the diktats of its master. There is a public perception that the CBI will either drag its feet or hasten, depending on what the exigencies, maybe political, maybe otherwise, are concerned. And the sad part is that when the CBI does something, I just heard some of the erstwhile CBI officers talking about how naturally such a probe would take a long time, and another officer saying it ought not to take time. The fact is, the public perception is they will take as much time as they are directed to take, or they'll take as little time as they're allowed to take. And that is the way the public sees the CBI today. Let's make no bones about it. Nobody today really talks about the CBI as a premier organization. Most people say they have no faith in the CBI, that the CBI is a motivated investigation. This is the perception. When you look at that as a perception, naturally, when a case like today's comes up, the immediate public mood is the court is right. The immediate public mood is, yes, the court is right. Look at the CBI. They dragged their feet for years and years for the simple reason that their own officers were involved. They wanted to exonerate their officers, maybe on political compulsions, maybe on their own reasons, whatever reason they wanted to. Finally, the High Court had to force them to complete a probe. And now an excuse is given that because the High Court forced them to complete a probe, they had to give a half-baked report. Now, either way, it does not make sense. Either way, it does not make sense. A, why did you take so long to complete the probe? Secondly, can you say because the High Court found fault with you for taking so long and told you to complete it quickly, therefore you gave a half-baked probe and only said half the matters could be investigated into? Either way, it shows that the CBI has failed in this investigation. Either way, it has failed in the investigation. Now, the point again is, this is a case of, we all know from the history of it that there was a lot of intra-CBI quarrels going on, and the actions could have been motivated, may not have been motivated. There's a lot of murkiness which was around the whole incident, and that is past history. But the fact is, as citizens of India, where CBI is involved in a number of investigations, I don't believe this kind of situation where the court comments on the CBI, and whichever way you look at it, either they drag their feet too long, or because they drag their feet, they had to complete a probe too quickly and therefore gave a half-baked report. Either way you look at it, I don't think the public view or public regard for the CBI would really increase by this. Far from it, it would reiterate the public's view, which to a great extent is that the CBI is not a reliable an independent investigative unit.
Oh, I completely agree with you, but I also find it interesting that you're limiting your answer by making it about the public perception, which is fair enough because you and I also don't know a lot of facts. I mean, I could argue on the other side by saying if the complainant in this case, Mr. Sundaram, in a case where Rakesh Asthana has been given a clean chit, is himself facing a charge sheet, which, by the way, was also filed by the Enforcement Directorate only this week. So, in the week that Rakesh Asthana gets a clean chit, his complainant actually faces a charge sheet now by the Enforcement Directorate. And if I had to add more to that, I would say, well, if the CBI says there was no evidence, then was the entire case false to begin with, putting bigger question marks against the former CBI chief Alok Verma. At the end of the day, there's so many questions, and the CBI doesn't seem to be giving us any answers at all. Absolutely no clarity or transparency coming through, Deepak Sharma. You know a lot more about, what goes on within this agency, the way cases have been dealt. What's your own sense with the information that's come out yesterday about this investigation and what the court observed today?
Tanvi, I've got a very different view from the guests who have given their views, opinions on this case. First of all, it doesn't surprises me that Rakesh Asthana, one of the most powerful IPS officers right now in the country, very close to Prime Minister who comes from Gujarat cadre, he's been given a clean chit. Now that's not a big surprise for me, but let's go a little bit back and see what was the background where this case took place. First of all, it was a fight between number 1 and number 2, director versus special director. And CVC was, it was too hot to handle this file for CVC. Now, behind Alok Verma, behind Mr. Rakesh Asthana, there were two lobbies, two different lobbies within CBI and within the government. Alok Verma was a candidate of another cabinet minister, while Mr. Asthana was a candidate of the Prime Minister's office. Now, so it's not only Verma or Asthana. There were lobbies within lobbies who were involved in this. This case should not have been given to CBI. This case should have been investigated by some other agency. How can CBI officials, how can they investigate their own special director, their own director? Even the joint directors were involved, because I'm again asserting it was a case where several lobbies were involved. So we cannot expect that CBI officers of a rank of a deputy SP or a DIG will have the guts to investigate his director or special director. And Rakesh Asthana, let's not forget, he's still a serving officer, one of the most powerful bureaucrats. One of the most powerful IPS officers in the country right now.
Okay, before I get Bhaskar Ghosh to come in, Mr. ML Sharma, do you want to respond to this? How can the CBI be investigating a case which essentially stems from CBI versus the CBI fight?
See, well, it looks very lucrative at the first sight, but there are problems. What are the other agencies? One is the Delhi Police. Second is the National Investigating Agency or Police Force or any other. Now there are problems in that. One, Delhi Police, what would they have done? If the CBI is under pressure, as our friends are saying, then the Delhi Police would also have been under pressure. Now, law as exists today, NIA Act, doesn't provide for entrustment of this investigation to NIA. NIA could have been suitable agency. In that case, court intervention was required. Like our constitutional courts have created jurisdiction for themselves for transfer of local police cases to the CBI, such kind of intervention was required. But this didn't happen. So this is my response to it. In principle, it is an attractive suggestion that it should have gone to another agency, but which agency? Now, that's the question. This is how I'll respond to it.
Okay, and to the other part that has now been said by two panelists, about a delay in probe and then submitting a half-baked probe. And if it's a half-baked probe, then how are we so sure that Rakesh Asthana and Devinder Singh didn't do anything?
Well, what can I say? Whole my life I have been investigating.
Yes.
I have no brief for CBI. Delay is a delay. As now I am a private person, I retired 10 years back. As a citizen of the country, I want quick investigations. This is my expectation for the agency. So I totally agree with Mr. Sundaram, who is a very distinguished lawyer, that investigation should be prompt. But when you get involved in investigations, the kind of promptness that the people of India expect, that always does not come about. Rest, Mr. Sundaram has given people's perception
Yes.
of the CBI. He's entitled to his views. It's better that I don't respond to it.
Okay, Bhaskar Ghosh, I want to come to you next because, here's the simple question, Bhaskar Ghosh. We were all given the assurance that things within the CBI will be fixed. Now, judging by what the court has said today, it doesn't look like much has changed in the CBI in the last 1.5 years.
Yeah, Tanvi, I was just hearing all my panelist expert comments. So as I'm representing the party, let me tell you a couple of things which is needed to be highlighted. First of all, CBI is an autonomous body, and it is have the all liberty of functioning in their own style and fashions. If you talk about this particular case, as some of my panelists say, the CBI versus CBI, but the accused and the exonerated officers are not only CBI. There's an officer from RAW also, Samant Goel. He was also accused in the particular cases, and he has been also exonerated. Now the question is whether CBI can probe into the matter regarding the CBI's own corruption. Of course, there are several examples are there where the CBI officers have been investigated by the CBI office higher authorities. But see, the government stand was very clear when there was a case between Alok Verma and Asthana. Then government all of a sudden take a decisions, but judicious decision, to move both of them out of their chairs so that the investigations is not been tampered or not been influenced or not been maneuvered or not been manipulated. So it was a very, very clean and neutral investigation, which ultimately resulted to the FRT. Now, if you see the in past of CBI, when our government was not there, the biggest scam of this country, the 2G, 3G, coal scam, Commonwealth Games scam, how long CBI has taken? Because some of my panelists was talking about such a long time. How much CBI has taken, how much time CBI has taken to file the charge sheet and supplementary charge sheet? It is not a very short time. It was
very valid
years.
point that you raise here, Mr.
My
Bhaskar
question
Ghosh.
is that
May I
CBI,
also point out many of these high-profile cases were actually investigated
Tanvi, what I want to
by
say.
Rakesh Asthana and Alok Verma. I'm just saying and reminding you and our viewers.
No, see, I'm not going personal. I am talking as a government or the party persons. I say that this is in principle about the organization.
Yes.
And what we are talking about are these cases also. And if you go to the CBI website, they claim that they have got a 98% or very high level of conviction rate. Now the question, if you take the intricacy, because I believe being a non IPS person, I believe that it depends on the intricacy of the problem.
So what are you saying?
Here,
the institution is all fine and it's just a few individuals here and there. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Ghosh?
The question is that, no. What I mean to say that when Rakesh Asthana was properly probed and it was found that there is no evidence, because entire CBI goes on evidence. The evidence was not supporting the accusation which was imposed on him, and there was FRT. And if it is matter of sub judice, so I cannot make any comments on that. But if court has got, someone has told very rightly, the court
CBI,
has got all liberty, like your case.
The court itself is saying that it looks like you arrested people. No. The court itself is saying it looks like you arrested people where there was no evidence present. You've ruined careers. On the other hand, where there is sufficient evidence present, you are not making any move. Those people, those big guys, the big accused, are roaming free. Yes. And this is not the first time a court has sounded extremely upset with the way investigation has gone.
Some of the panelists has told Tanvi, court has got...
Okay, I'm slightly short on time.
Court has got all power because you see Ramesh Talwar case,
I'm slightly short of time, so I need to quickly move on.
The court has reopened the case and they have given...
I have one more question. I think everybody here will agree that perhaps we could have found a fairer way to do this investigation, but I want a larger existential question about CBI answered. Mr. Sundaram, do you believe we should simply dismantle this institution and perhaps set up something afresh?
Look, that won't be the answer, because what you set up afresh will turn out to be a duplicate of what you have dismantled. I think what really has to be looked into is how to make the CBI truly autonomous. Not reflective of what the political masters or any other influencing people would do. What we really need to do is the CBI as a concept, if conceptually based on something like the FBI in the United States or other such independent autonomous investigative bureaus, was truly made autonomous, and not made autonomous only in form, but not in substance, it will never change. Whatever nomenclature you give, you may dismantle this, make something else. Instead, give teeth in the CBI Act itself and make it an autonomous body, and a truly autonomous body in all ways. I think that's what you should look at, and that's what should be done if you want this to be a premier investigative body.
All right, I'm going to, at this point of time, thank all of our panelists. We had a shorter debate due to some earlier events that we had to broadcast, and an exclusive conversation there with the Prime Minister. But thank you so much for still coming in and talking to us about this very important issue. Viewers, I think it's very, very clear. Like Mr. Sundaram was saying, some significant steps have to be taken. Now, it just feels like deja vu, because we said the same thing a year ago, and more than that. We said it repeatedly, that something needs to be done to clean the rot within the CBI. Now, I'm not saying that XYZ individuals are actually corrupt, that they're actually, they actually took bribe or gave bribe or whatever. I'm simply saying that case after case, there are instances where it doesn't look like a genuine, fair, efficient investigation is being done. And if in the most high profile of the cases, there are, in the middle of the case, there are transfers, not just one, but 3 senior officials transferred out, extensions after extensions sought to finish the investigation, and suddenly when the CBI turns around and says, oh, well, half of them didn't do anything, the other half, we think they did, we're still looking for evidence against them, we have some, we think. Obviously, the court is going to show some amount of frustration. Imagine, this is the agency that is given the task of investigating the biggest of the cases in our country, from serious, horrifying crimes to economic crime and financial fraud. How will we ever restore the credibility of the CBI? Thank you for joining us on this debate.